crafty friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have a new video featuring cat Scrappiness. I am going to be sharing some Easter cards, but I know at this point Easter is almost basically here. However, I think that these cards, you could easily replace the Happy Easter with Happy Spring, and they would work out great. I am showing off the Cat Scrappiness Crafters Essentials Easter edition, but I do think, again, that the images could be used in the springtime or for a variety of occasions throughout the year. Like there's things like, a grassy hill and butterflies, and I don't think those are restricted to any particular season. I wanted to create a series of simple cards because I needed to get some Easter cards done for myself. As you can see, I'm quite last minute here. But I decided to create a series of simple shaker cards. I started with the Cat Scrappiness Wonky Wavy circle dies because I wanted to use that as the main shaker element. And once I picked out which of the dies would work well for me by placing the other dies that would create the shaker windows onto them, I went to this pastel paper pad from Fawn, and the idea here was that they're great Easter colors, first and foremost, but there is a cat scrappiness challenge going on right now to use pastels. And so I wanted to get the opportunity to remind myself to share that with you. So even if you're even if you're done creating your Easter cards, you can still use pastel colors in your projects and enter to win a gift certificate at Cat Scrappiness. So I'll make sure to link that in the video description as well. So here I basically tried to pick out some papers that I thought would mix well together, and I thought about if I chose a diagonal paper for the circle and the shaker element, then I would probably want a square facing, or more of a, I hope this makes sense, but there are diagonal lines on some of the plaids and there are square lines. And if I did a square background, I'd want the diagonal lines or vice versa. So I wanted to mix them up. I wasn't really feeling the diagonal on diagonal. I just thought if they don't line up right, it might not look visually as good to me, but that's just a personal preference. And so a little sharing of how I decide to pick out papers as well. I took my background papers and I cut them to 4 by 5 1/4. However, once I started working on the cards, I kind of regretted this and wished I had instead taken the Wonky Wavy stitched rectangles and cut with those, because it would have paired up well with my circle, and therefore I would have created a more consistent look and added a bit more interest. For my sentiment, I am going to use that Fawn stamp set there, but I'm not going to use anything else. So any sort of Happy Easter, Happy Spring sentiment that you have would work just as well. I also got my stitched flags or banners from a Cat Scrappiness die set as well. So as you can see, my bunny, my butterflies, and my chick are all cut out, and I'm just lining up my sentiment on a block to make things a little bit faster. When I want to stamp a perfect sentiment the first time, I tend to reach for VersaFine ink because it's a pigment-based ink, and therefore it seems to give richer impression than, say, a dye ink, which sometimes I don't get a perfect stamp the first time. However, I only have it in black, so it kind of limits my choices. And after I stamped it, I also was kind of thinking, maybe, stamping those in color would have been nice. And I'm just sharing those thoughts with you because I want to give you alternative ideas of how you might mix up your card to make them a little bit more suited to you if you wanted to do something similar. In order to cut my transparency pieces, I wanted to make sure that the circle would fit well. And so I did just die cut them out. You could, however, just trace the die or hold the die up and cut it close. I just honestly found it faster to die cut them. And then I don't like it to line up perfectly with the edge, so I die cut them, but then I trimmed a bit off. So that's why I suggest, again, You could simply, trace around them, or like not trace, but like cut around the circle die without having to cut it through the machine. But I was also a little bit concerned since each of my images was a slightly different size, like each of my windows was a slightly different size. I knew none of them went past the stitching lines. So if I die cut it out and then trimmed off only by the stitching lines, it would be big enough. I hope that made some sense there as a helpful tip and not just a confusing sentence. Anyway, next up, I'm ready to move on to the shaker bit. You could die cut several of the same image. So like you could have die cut out of foam the circle with the chick inside of it. It would have like worked on the die cut machine. But since I didn't line up my dies like that, since I cut my circle separately than the chick, I thought it might be tricky to try to line it up again. So that's the reason I'm going with this just sort of more standard way of doing a shaker card. I'm taking some thin foam tape and I'm doubling it up to keep it nice and thick. It does make it a little bit trickier to mail, but 2 stamps usually does the trick. And I like the thickness because it makes the shaker elements, the sequins, really move around a lot and makes it more interesting. And I usually try to give my sequins a little bit extra space if possible too. Here there wasn't really a lot of extra room because the bunny or the chick, and particularly the bunny, was really close to the edge of the circle, so there's not a lot of extra shaking room in there. But my preference does tend to be to go bigger with the shaker, like, I don't know what the word for it would be, but like the shaker hole, the shaker frame, so that there's more room to shake around. And then for my backing, since I didn't want the pattern paper to show through, I wanted a white pattern paper. I did the same thing that I did with my transparency sheet. I die cut it out of white paper and then trimmed it a little bit so that they wouldn't poke out of the edges. I don't care to line things up exactly. It just kind of feels fussy to me and not what I like. It's not what I enjoy about my card making time. So just trimming off that little bit helped. So at this point, I am up to like 2 full containers of cat scrappiness, sequins and gems and like all kinds of fancy bits. They just make so many cute ones. It's really hard to just pick, 1 or 2. And so I do have some new Easter ones though, or spring. And there was the Easter egg parade. There was the chick or the egg and spring butterflies. But I thought about also maybe if I just had a simple yellow, that also might look nice behind the chick because it would make the chick look yellow. But I had the cat scrappiness jewels and I had yellow stars. I didn't like the idea of the stars. It just didn't feel in line with Easter to me. And then with the jewels, I think it certainly could have worked, but I just wasn't sure that it was for me. I don't know if I'd like the look of the back of the jewels, and I think because they're a bit thicker, they wouldn't shake around as much, and as I mentioned before, I love them to shake around a lot. So I decided to go with Easter egg parade. I thought the colors matched perfectly with the paper. However, I didn't want the eggs. I just wanted those colors. I didn't want the eggs in part because the window was a little small, like the chick, and so I wasn't sure if you'd see them as well, it would be clear that they were the eggs. And I don't know, it didn't really strike me. I thought the other materials would shake around a bit better because they were smaller in this small window. But then I decided to use the same pack of sequins with the eggs for the bunny. And it just kind of suited me. But my point with that is that you don't have to use any particular pack of sequins the way it comes. If there's one color in the pack that doesn't suit you, take it out. It's a little bit finicky, but to me, I think it's worth it because it kind of extends the life and usefulness of the sequin packs that you already have in your stash. So now this is how I've completed my shaker. I'm not going to keep going through this process with all 3 of them. You get how it works. You probably knew how it worked to begin with, but I just know some people appreciate hearing the thought process that goes into how someone designs a card. So I've paired up this green background or like this green shaker element with the blue background, and I'm going to use a yellow sentiment so that this one leans maybe a touch more masculine. I mean, it's Easter, pastel pretty colors. I guess, there's pink sequins in it, so maybe it's not the perfect masculine Easter card, but I think little boys would get a kick out of it. I mean, anything that moves is more interesting to them. Shaker cards are fun. Any kid who've ever given to a shaker card has loved it. And I will make the other ones not so much with that slant, but I do kind of keep those things in mind as I like to give my cards to a variety of people. Anyway, that is it for my cards today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you are interested in more crafting tutorials, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'll leave you a link to the Cat Scrappiness challenge as well as to my blog and their blog so you can check out more details and the products in case there's anything that you're interested in. Thank you so much for spending this time with me. Have an awesome day. Bye.